Minister Paschal Donohoe is being praised in the mainstream media for his prudent budget. The reality, however, is that it's a blatant class bias budget that has been used to scare Brexit and climate crisis to hit workers and the poor in the main. So I want to just look at a few things that he's up to. And when I say he's looking after his own, I want to mention a few items that are contained in the budget. The Central Bank, first of all, has predicted that tens of thousands of jobs will be lost if there is a no-deal Brexit. But instead of taking measures to create jobs, the Minister has used the crisis to benefit his rich friends. 80 million a year in a full year will be given to support small businesses and agriculture. But instead of tying that grant with a commitment and a guarantee that jobs will be defended and retained, the Minister is giving handout to the company executives. And he's using the cover of Brexit, this is really disgraceful, to extend the notorious Special Assignee Relief Scheme known as SARP, that allows company executives who earn more than $75,000 a year to cut their tax bill by 30% when they earn over that figure. This scheme was due to be phased out, but now it has been extended till 2022 and will cost us in tax forgone €28 million a year. He's given more tax break to companies that pay executives in share options through key employee engagement programmes. He's giving tax relief to high flyers who travel back and forth to countries like China. In 2014, just 144 people availed of this scheme, gaining them a tax break each of up to €35,000. He's given tax relief to bookies so that they can get €50,000 in relief from not paying a betting duty. But he is hitting workers and the poor. In a disgusting move, the Minister has stopped the 30-cent increase on the minimum wage, making workers who get just €9.80 an hour the cost to pay for the cost of the Brexit crisis. A group of expert economists calculated that the minimum essential living standard that will provide a living wage is $12.30 an hour, a far cry from €9.80, and he stops the 30 cents an hour increase. This is in particular going to hit lone parents and their children who are already locked into poverty in this country. A no-deal Brexit is going to lead to higher prices, and I think we all accept that, and therefore any government which cared for its people would have given tax relief to workers. But this Minister has not given a penny to the PAYE workers. PAYE workers are paying $8 billion more now in taxes than they did before the economic crash, and this is because of the introduction of the USC and the reduction in tax allowances. The Minister could have put money back in workers' pockets so that they could deal with higher prices and help keep the economy going. But instead, he chose to look after his wealthy friends. Pensioners in Ireland are often in dire poverty, and many had hoped that they would get that extra £5 a week to help them. But again, they got nothing. There's nothing for carers or people with disabilities, despite the fact that there are notorious waiting times for assessment for disabilities, even though this is against our own laws. The outrageous discrimination of those under 24 years of age has not ended. It has only changed for those who can live independently and are on a payment like RAS or HAP. So for thousands of young people under the age of 24, and bear in mind that youth unemployment is much higher in this country than the national average is. It's at 11%. And for those who live with their parents or find themselves newly unemployed and live at home, they will still just get €112 a week. The climate change hypocrisy is breathtaking, and the government's only answer to it has been to slap €6 on every tonne of carbon. This means a 2-cent litre increase on the price of petrol and home heating oil. The Minister made it clear that this is only the start of the carbon tax hikes that will last until 2030. By the time he's finished, many will be paying an extra €500 to €1,000 a year in carbon tax. He claims that this will be an incentive to change behaviour, but there's already a carbon tax on petrol, and still the numbers of cars on Irish roads have doubled. Ireland is one of the most highly dependent car societies in the world because investment in our public transport is so low. And it was very interesting to hear the Minister answer a question on Sean O'Rourke today as to why carbon taxes have not reduced emissions, and his answer was because they're not high enough. In other words, we haven't penalised them enough to change their behaviour, but what incentive is he given to help people change their behaviour? No improvement in public transport, very little in retrofitting, and certainly a continuance of the same old mantra around climate change. Dublin has one of the highest fares in buses in Europe, double the EU average. There aren't enough buses because Fianna Fáil and the Greens cut the fleet by 300 back in the day, and that hasn't been re-established in full. In rural Ireland, public transport is almost non-existent outside the main towns. So Fine Gael's hypocrisy on climate change is shown by the fact, as well as all of the above, they have refused to put a tax on aviation fuel or on companies like Ryanair's profits. Such a tax could have yielded us 900 million a year and provide resources to move to free and full public transport. And of course, need I say, they continue to block measures that would leave fossil fuels in the ground. And in the same week, the same government announced their support for building an LNG terminal at Shannon that will import fracked gas from the US. It's breathtaking in its hypocrisy. On board Nimona, in reality, a paltry 6 million for workers and communities. This is utterly disgraceful, and I think we're going to see uproar in the Midlands because of this. If you compare this to northern Spain, where the coal industry was wound down, 250 million were pumped into those communities with the same number of workers, roughly the same number of workers, in order to see a just transition. But I think we just have to keep repeating that compared to what has been done for the business community and the multinational executive, it is disgraceful the way workers have been treated. I want to mention the 20 million that was announced for retrofitting homes in the Midland. That was already part of an announcement that was made in a commitment to refit the nation's social housing network. How many times, Minister, do you have to re-announce the same projects under different guises to hide the level of inaction? And just like on Brexit, their aim is to make the poor pay for the climate crisis. On green jobs, and with Brexit and the climate crisis, we need a radical change of policy to create the tens of thousands of green jobs that are needed. Irish homes are among the least efficient in Europe, so we need a massive state-run retrofitting programme. Our electricity is far too dependent on fossil fuels, so we need public investment in renewable energy that could create thousands of jobs. And this Parliament could begin by showing us the legislation for allowing the production of offshore wind energy that has been promised in front of this House for the last 3 years. We haven't seen ink on the paper yet. And the country is facing a massive housing crisis. Thousands of jobs could be created if, and it has been repeated by many parties here, a publicly owned building company was set up to construct the social and affordable housing that we need. There's plenty of money to fund programmes like these if only we had a government that was not beholden to the rich. We could stop, for example, spending millions on legal fees to defend the Apple tax, take back the 14 billion. We could stop the banks we bailed out getting away with no tax on their profits. If we close the loopholes that they gained from the past, we could raise an extra 900 million. We could introduce a wealth tax on higher incomes for those earning over 80,000 a year. All of these measures could provide real answers to the twin crises of Brexit and of climate change. But Minister Donoghue, however, prefers to use this as an excuse to pursue his blatant class agenda to make the poor and workers pay for the twin crisis that we are facing. This budget is a disgrace.
Thank you, Deputy Smith. Now, Deputy